everybody, and welcome to From the Mezzanine. I'm your host, Lindsey Stone. On From the Mezzanine, we talk about Broadway news, Broadway grosses, and let's be honest, all of the Broadway tea and gossip that happens week to week in the Broadway stratosphere. Welcome, everybody. How is everybody doing? I have some Broadway fun tings to report. Because I saw a brand new Broadway show this week, The Notebook. I have heard so many amazing things about The Notebook, and I was so excited. I have been long awaiting this production because John Cardoza, my king from the Moulin Rouge, is at the forefront of it. And if you saw on my Instagram, I saw him at the stage door, and it was just a lovely little reunion that I will talk about in a bit. But let's talk about the show itself. So The Notebook, probably the one thing that really stood out to me, and that was a little bit obscure. I guess we're starting the review on kind of a sour note because this is like my one critique of the show. It's that the music is very alternative for a show and a story and a movie that it is based off of. That is so mainstream. That was one of the things I was really surprised by. So the music is by Ingrid Michaelson, and I know she has some devout fans, but I am not familiar with Ingrid Michaelson, and I believe, well, my perception of her style was somewhat similar to that of like Anais Mitchell, or who is behind Hadestown, just an alternative indie. I don't know if they would put themselves in those categories, but that's kind of where I would classify their music. It's different. It's not your typical Broadway style. And I think that that is really appealing to people who may not be devout musical theater fans. And also, I do think that it sounds really different and it sets it apart from these other shows that are on Broadway with more of the big band, large orchestra. And these shows that I'm talking about are more of the modern shows like I would have expected The Notebook to fall into, such as the Anne Juliet sound, the Moulin Rouge sound, just very mainstream sounds. And this is very much so not that. The music is very symbolic, a lot of chords and guitars and piano, not a huge production for the music, which is unique to me because I would have seen The Notebook, the musical, having a very typical mainstream sound. And I feel like that would have made me like it a little bit more because it fits the vision of the movie to me a little bit more if the music was just more. If you've seen it, I hope this is making sense. And if you haven't seen it, this shouldn't discourage you from seeing it because it is still a good show. And if you're it's not quite as far out as Hadestown is because it's not a fantastical story or, you know, Greek mythology. And so it is telling a modern love story. But I am just surprised by the style of the music choice for this show. It's not what I would have expected. And I think that really surprised me. And I will say it's not my favorite type of style of music. Sometimes it gets a little sleepy. Matter of fact, the person sitting right next to me slept for probably 75% of the show, and when I say he slept, he was snoring, and I felt bad for him because he seemed like he was really into Broadway, and then right as the curtains opened, his head just bobbed down and he was dead asleep. And I was like, are you like, should I wake you up? Like, I feel like you're not meaning to fall asleep right now. I get it. We all have long days, but I felt bad for him. But it is a very lo-fi melodic tunes. And so it is a little bit sleepy sometimes. And so that was my main critique of the show. Other than that, I really thought the cast was the most excellent part of The Notebook. Let me give some shout outs. So the way that this is played, 3 different people play the main roles, Noah and Allie. And so one younger couple plays young Noah and young Allie, and then so on. A middle-aged couple plays middle-aged Noah and Allie, and then an older couple plays old Noah and Allie. And I thought that most of the main cast was really incredible. Of course, I am incredibly biased to my man, John Cardoza. If you haven't been a long listener from the Mezzanine for a long time, let me just tell y'all the path that me and John Cardoza have been on. And so I act like we're like friends, but we're not. But I wish that we were. But this is like where I found my love for him because he's really, really, I think he is one of the most humble Broadway actors. He is so genuinely kind at the stage door. And you know, the What Makes You Beautiful song by One Direction, I had a One Direction phase. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody. But he is like, you don't know you're beautiful and that's what makes you beautiful. Like that is John Cardoza to me. He doesn't know how unbelievably talented he is. He's just that humble, and it really just makes an impact on me. I think he's one of a kind. So anyways, to tell you all about the story, back whenever Moulin Rouge was touring, whenever I lived back in Texas, I had already seen Moulin Rouge on Broadway with Aaron Tveit, I think like 4 or 5 times at this point, and I thought nobody would ever compare to Aaron. I wasn't really that interested in seeing the national tour because I was stupid, and I thought, okay, the national tour isn't going to be as good as Broadway when I've seen such incredible performers on Broadway, and this was in the height of my Moulin Rouge obsession. So anyways, I saw Moulin Rouge in Dallas the very day before it was going to leave. And so they were doing 2 more performances in Dallas. I was seeing the matinee show. That's what we had tickets for. So we went, we saw it. Our seats were very mediocre. And if you know Dallas Fair Park, that theater is awful. It is just humongous, like giant. It is humongously monstrous. And if you are even in the balcony, you have to strain your eyes to be able to see the actors' faces. It's a really bad theater. But it gets great national tours, so I'm happy about that. Anyways, so we were in the balcony a little bit further back. It started, and this angel of a man walks out on stage, thus being John Cardoza as Christian in Moulin Rouge. And I just thought he was so remarkable. He played Christian with so much compassion and realness and a boyish nature that Aaron Tveit did not do. And that's not to say that Aaron Tveit was not perfect. He was. But this is what I said on the podcast. Aaron Tveit is perfect. John Cardoza is outstanding. He really, really was. And then by the time they got to Roxanne, I think I was crying. And I just was really shocked by his performance because I thought, I already love this show as much as a person could ever love a show. How is he making me feel things that I've never felt while watching this show before, even though I've seen it so many times? And so his performance is what made my sister and I feel like, oh, they're leaving our city tomorrow. We need to get tickets for the evening performance. And so that is just what we did. We got, I think we went to the box office. We got 3rd row, I believe it was. And so we were right up front. So we watched the show 2 times in one day. And that was just because I was like, I need to see John Cardoza's Roxanne up close. And it was so worth it. I saw him at the stage door. He was so kind. I talked about him here on the podcast, and we've had some interactions on Instagram. And so I am just a really, really big fan of him. I think he's a great person, and I think he's an excellent actor. So that was one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to go and see The Notebook so quickly too, it being still in previews. And opposite of John Cardoza as young Allie, because John was young Noah, was Jordan Tyson. I thought she was excellent. Joy Woods played not old, but like middle-aged Allie. And if you have seen Joy Woods, she has recently been on Little Shop. She was in 6, which I think is what most people just love her for. She really is remarkable. Her voice is so smooth and so powerful and so beautiful. She is incredible. She's a wonderful actress. I can't say any bad things about Joy Wood. She's unbelievable. Ryan Vasquez played her opposite as middle-aged Noah, and he was good. I have, such an affinity for John, and so to move on from John and see this middle-aged Noah, I missed John, and I wish that John, they could have just made him look older, but Ryan was good and he was fine. I just am partial to John Cardoza, I guess. But he held his own, and he did show the older and wiser and more rugged and not quite so naive side to Noah that you don't see in his younger years. So that was good. And then the oldest version, is that bad to say? I feel mean saying the older version of Noah and Allie, but that is how they are put in the playbill. Okay, so the older Noah and Allie were the best. And I would like to see them win the Tony Awards. Older Noah and older Allie are typically always on the stage while other things are going on, and they're kind of in the background, and older Noah is reading the journal to older Allie, and so that's really sweet, and you kind of just get to see the imagery of his words coming to life. So you do see a lot of older Noah and older Allie, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're in Best Actor in the like primary actor category, but it really feels like an even spread across all characters, so it's hard to say. Anyways, yes, the older Noah and older Allie, they held your heart in their hands. They were so genuine. I believed they were their characters. It was tragic, as we all know how this story goes. It's a very, very sad ending, and they did it with such grace, and they carried the audience to that moment with them, and you really felt it. There were so many sniffles in the audience. I actually did not have to pull out my Kleenex, which I'm really surprised by, but certainly most people were sniffling, and the emotions were very raw and real in that audience and on stage. Which is just like such a sad ending, and that is where the musical ends. There's like one final song. I can't remember what it's truly called or what they say, but it's just kind of like embrace the moments of life. And it really did make me be a little bit introspective, because older Noah and older Allie are looking back and reminiscing on their younger love story, and it just makes you feel like be very grateful for where you are and take advantage of the way your body moves right now when you're younger and the feeling of young love, and just embrace that. And it did make me like just cherish my life. And so that was really sweet. I like musicals that do, cause some self-development and looking inward. So that was fun. But it does end in like the classic musical theater ending where they all come to the end of the stage and just belt that last line out in your faces all together in unison. And the audience rose to their feet and gave a standing ovation before the lights even went down. And so I think that's a really good sign of audience engagement and how it's doing and people really, really liking it. And so, yeah, though I do have my critiques of the show, I do think that there's certainly a group of people out there that this is for. I know a lot of people are really enjoying it. They've got an excellent cast, and when you have an excellent cast, what more can you do? You've put your best foot forward. So I do anticipate this being a pretty big show this season after I've seen it myself. And then at the stage door, I've got to tell you guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see that I have some signatures on my playbill. This is John Cardoza and Ryan Vasquez signatures. And I just have to say, you probably saw it on Instagram if you follow me there at From the Mezzanine podcast. But I was, standing there with my playbill, so excited. I was like so nervous just because I just love. Like, do y'all get that way? Do you get nervous at a stage door? Because I certainly do. You've just watched these people on stage and then they're right there. And there's so much I want to say, but also I feel like this isn't my opportunity to tell you how much you mean to me, even though that's such a nice gesture and I'm sure that they enjoy it. At the same time, I'm like, they just did a whole entire show. They're exhausted. Like, I don't need to tell them really anything about me. Like, just sign my playbill and move on with it. But anyways, I did say to John Cardoza, I was so nervous, and I was like, I saw you in Dallas and you were incredible. And he looks up and he says, oh yeah, let me get this right. What exactly did he say? He said, oh yeah, we've met before. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool that you remember. Anyways, it was just like one small little moment that was just kind beyond words. And it meant a lot to me that he looked up, and I could tell he was like, oh yeah, I recognize you vaguely, I'm sure. But it was just really, really kind. And considering I came to see the show, especially for him, and it sounded like a lot of people did. I was not alone in that. So many other people at the stage door were saying, John, I saw you in Moulin Rouge in Chicago and in here and there. And so he definitely has like a little fan base, and I'm just beyond proud and happy for him because I'll be following him for a long, long time. Okay, so that wraps up my recap of The Notebook. I do want to say I still am not a fan of this art. It looks very Etsy, Canva, like watercolors. It's so, can I say chuggy? I know that word is not used very often anymore, but it just seems very chuggy to me. And I love the actual logo, the Notebook logo, but the watercolor of the couple jumping into each other's arms is so chuggy to me, and I do not like that. And it's on all of their branding, and so yeah, I'm not buying any merch. Anyways, anything else? Oh, I did do Rush for it, and I believe we can ask Bryn because I think she's going to be on the podcast next week, but she's the one who rushed it. I just got to reap the benefits, and I believe that they got there like about when box office opened, maybe a couple minutes before, and none of us were able to sit right next to each other. I was actually in a really awful seat. I was in the far, far left orchestra, probably 5 rows back, so I was close. However, I couldn't see the back of the set at all. Like anything, any projections, any digital effects they were doing on the back of the set, I couldn't see any of that. And I did miss quite a few scenes, so I would not recommend that. Anyways, yeah, The Notebook overall, I think it's a good musical that will have a very successful season. I would guesstimate, let's make a Broadway prediction right here and now. I'm going to guesstimate that it will last for a year and a half. I feel like that's a little bit generous, but that's what I'm going to guess. But time will tell. They're going to have their opening very soon, and we will read the reviews and see how it is being accepted by the critics. Okay. I do want to plug real quick, guys. Go and subscribe to me on YouTube. I told y'all last week that I would do something once I got to 100 subscribers, and I completely forgot about that until right now. So let's see if I can think of something cool that I'll do once we get to 100 subscribers. Ooh! Here is something. I have something going on in the background right now of From the Mezzanine. A big, big, big announcement that it's going to mean more content for you guys, more interaction between me and you, and I'm beyond excited about it. And maybe if I get 100 subscribers, I will announce the little thing that I am teasing that is super duper exciting, and I think a lot of y'all are going to be super hyped for it because it means more From the Mezzanine and just like closer relationship between me and my incredible listeners. So let's get to 100 subscribers on YouTube. Last I checked, I believe we were about 30 away. Once we get to 100 subscribers on YouTube, I will make my big, big announcement. There you have it. Okay, let's do it. You can find me on YouTube. It's down in the show notes below. Or you can type in From the Mezzanine, a Broadway podcast on YouTube. All right, folks. Is there anything else before we get into Broadway grosses? I don't think so. So let's head on into our Broadway grosses. Okay, I'm excited for this week because it's going to show The Notebook's like first full week of previews. And I feel like some other things have come out too. We might have some newcomers. Let's see. And last week, Wicked was number 1. So let's see if they maintained their number 1 spot. No, they didn't. Dang it. The Lion King is number 1. Wicked is number 2. Hamilton is number 3. Merrily We Roll Along is number 4. Moulin Rouge is 5. Moulin Rouge has beat out Sweeney Todd, which is at number 6. OMG. I cannot believe how much Boy George is doing for Moulin Rouge. Week to week, I am shocked by it. I guess he has a very big audience that I am just unaware of because holy cannoli, they are doing so incredibly well. If they are at number 5, that's amazing. That makes me believe that with the right casting, they could actually get to number 1. Who could be cast? Zac Efron. There it is. If Zac Efron was Christian in Moulin Rouge, I think Moulin Rouge would be the top Broadway show for forever. And I can see Zac Efron as Christian so clearly. Like, he would be amazing. Is he a little, no. I don't think he's a little too old because he's probably about the same age as Aaron Tveit. Oh my gosh. Petition for Zac Efron to be Christian in Moulin Rouge. Please. That, I don't know how I just came up with that, but that's like, I'm having like an out of body experience. That was such a good take. Zac Efron would be perfect. He would be so sweet and hot, let's be honest. And if he was on Broadway, that would bring so many people to Broadway. Moulin Rouge marketing PR team, y'all need to take me up on this. Send Zac Efron a request to be Christian because that would be unreal. And why do I feel like he would do it? I really think that he would. He is very like he has like his Netflix show, I think, and he's into like the outdoors and kind of doing that thing. But come back to your roots, Zac. Like you started in musicals. You have got an incredible voice. The Greatest Showman was what it was because of Zac Efron and because of Hugh Jackman, I know. And it was an amazing movie. But to have Zac Efron in that, it made it so much bigger. So Zac Efron as Christian in Moulin Rouge, that is perfect. Chef's kiss. Okay, wow. I love just having like live epiphanies on the podcast. It's so fun. Okay, MJ the Musical is number 6. Aladdin is number 7. Hadestown is number 8. What? Slow clap for Hadestown. At number 8. Lola Tung and Jordan Fisher have brought it up to number 8. Jordan Fisher wasn't strong enough alone because whenever he joined the cast, it didn't bump it up too much. Like really barely it bumped it up. But Lola Tung is bringing everybody over to Hadestown. Wow. Way to go, Hadestown. I honestly didn't know that was possible for Hadestown. I really didn't. Okay, number 9 is this new play called Enemy of the People that I really want to see. Let's look it up because I haven't even talked about it very much. I know it has the girl from You in it, and I would like to see her. Victoria Pedretti is the one that I'm talking about. But she's not even the highest billed actor in this. We have Jeremy Strong, who's huge because of Succession, and Michael Imperioli, who is from The Sopranos, and he was recently in White Lotus. So they've got an amazing cast, and I'm really happy to see a play that high up in the Broadway grosses. That's great. They had 103% capacity last week and they're still in previews. Wow. Okay, I might have gotten off in my counting, but Enemy of the People is number 10. That is just wild, guys. What an amazing week in Broadway grosses. Okay, heading right along into our news stories of the week with kind of a sad tale that I'm really honestly surprised that this news came out when it did, how quickly as it did, even though despite the fact that this show hasn't been doing incredibly in the grosses week to week, I just thought that they were in it for the long haul, but it appears that they are not because we got word this week that Spamalot the Musical is closing on Broadway, guys. I'm really surprised by this. I've seen this show twice now. It's an amazing show with a stellar cast. It doesn't have any superstars in the cast, like I'm talking like Hollywood stars. Of course, the cast is really strong. They have Ethan Slater. They have, which honestly, like, I guess a lot of people aren't going to go and see it for him, even though he's in the pop culture so much right now. Yeah, I guess he's not big enough to cause a big wave either. And then James Monroe Eagleheart is a huge Broadway favorite. But I guess it's just not enough to get people in, which is sad. Do y'all feel like one of the biggest proponents of if a show is going to do well or not is who is in the cast and if you have a big name? Because I feel like nowadays that's the biggest reason a show stays on Broadway. Yeah, you can be good, but once you have a huge name, then you're going to be bumped up in the grosses and you're going to have over 100% capacity week to week. I feel like people just go for who is in the cast lately. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think as musical theater lovers, we go see any show despite who might be in the cast. But I do know that tourists, like whenever we do have friends visit and they're not huge musical theater people, they do say, I just want to go see somebody famous in a show. And so when that is an option, like you can go and see Daniel Radcliffe, of course you're going to spend a little bit of extra money and see him rather than some show without a big name when you're a tourist. I get it. I agree with it? No, I don't, but I do get it. Okay, anyways, let's stick to Spamalot. So they announced this week that their final performance is going to be on April 7th. So we have just under a month to get in there to see it if you haven't already. And I would recommend seeing the show. I think it's hilarious. I think you kind of have to be a Monty Python fan to get it. I think if you're not, things might go over your head or you might not think it's super funny. But I do think that if you are a fan, you're going to like this show. So April 7th is the date that it'll close. And at that time, it will have played 17 previews and only 164 regular performances. Guys, that's really not very, very much. Like, when did it open? When I saw it for the first time, it was still in previews, and that would have been back in November, I think. So yeah, November to April, November, December, January, February, March, April. Yeah, that's just like half a year. That's really not very good. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that it's not sticking out considering it's such a big name. Fans of comedy would like to go and see this show. And I would have just thought it would have been received a lot better than it was. But never fear, if you are not in New York or you didn't get a chance to see this show just yet, they are planning to do a national tour. Now, let me remind you, this is the classic bait and switch that they do whenever a show is closing. They say, we're closing, but don't worry, it's not bad. We're going on a national tour, to kind of just soften the blow. And a lot of times the national tours never actually happen. But I could see this one going on tour and doing pretty well. And that tour, that air quotes tour that is suspected to be happening, is going to launch fall 2025. So we've got some time between now and the tour for it to fizzle away, which I kind of predict is going to happen. Although I remember hearing that that Spamalot going on to Broadway was kind of just like the predecessor to it going on tour. Like, they went to Broadway so they could take it on tour, because maybe it does do so well on tours. But also, shows don't have to arrive on Broadway in order to go on tours. Like, Les Mis is always touring, and I don't know the last time it was on Broadway. I don't think it was that long ago, but it wasn't super recent. So, or Hairspray. Hairspray's on tour. Mamma Mia's on tour. Those haven't been on Broadway for a minute. So I don't really understand the logic there, because you definitely don't need to arrive on Broadway to go on a tour, even though it is going to drum up anticipation and excitement for the show if you know that it was just recently on Broadway and now it's setting sail on tour. We'll see what happens. The producer of the show, Jeffrey Finn, said in a statement, quote, "I am so proud of the entire cast, creative team, musicians, and crew for their hard work and for delivering the highest level of joy and laughter back on Broadway when we needed this more than ever," quote. He goes on to say, quote, "I am honored to continue the long legacy of the Kennedy Center Productions transferring to Broadway so audiences beyond DC can experience this glorious production of Spamalot at the St. James Theater," quote. So this is interesting that he said that. I do remember hearing that it was their intention all along also to just have this as a limited run, but they never said how limited it would be. You know, typically they say 24-week run or even a 9-week run. They can be super short sometimes, but they never set an end date, and so it wasn't really publicized that this was a limited run, and I have to imagine it's going to go down in the books as a flop, but we can't be so sure yet. We'll probably have that information if they recouped their investments after April 7th, whenever they close. But I do love the idea. I love how he says in here, the legacy of transferring Kennedy Center shows onto Broadway so that more people can see them. So that would be incredible if they transferred Tick, Tick, Boom onto Broadway, maybe amped up the production budget a little bit more, made it more of a Broadway spectacle, because I would love to have Tick, Tick, Boom on Broadway. So keep that legacy up, producer man, and bring Tick, Tick, Boom to Broadway. I think a lot of people would be excited about that. All right, y'all. Our next story is some more closing news. I just want to touch on it briefly, that the show Days of Wine and Roses, starring Brian Darcy James and Kelly O'Hara, has set their closing date as well. Now, this isn't a surprise. It has been at the bottom of the grosses. It has not been making a lot of money. It has not had a lot of people in the seats. Bryn went and saw it, and she reported back that half of the theater was empty, and that's never a good sign, especially when you've recently arrived on Broadway. This show is playing at the Studio 54 Theater, which I believe is quite a small theater, and so the fact that they couldn't fill it is really unfortunate. And I'm sure it just wasn't making enough money to survive. I think it was just another case of that typical closing narrative. So this show is going to close on March 31st, giving us, 3 weeks to go and see it, which isn't bad. That's going to be enough time to get people in the door who want to go and see it. I will not be one of those people, to be honest with you. I am somewhat of a fan of Brian Darcy James, but not enough of a fan to go and sit through this show. I've heard, and it definitely doesn't seem like my style. I've heard that it's somewhat boring, which I hate to say because that's such a blatant one level word, boring, like something that's boring to some may be really moving to others. But at the same time, it's not my taste. And I'd be really curious to know if there is anybody out there who really, really loved this show, felt seen by this show. I know it's a heavy show and a sad show that depicts a couple that is struggling due to one's alcoholism. And that doesn't sound like a fun night on Broadway to me. And that's really what I indulge in whenever I go to Broadway. I want to have a fun, moving night. And it seems depressing, which is why I have not bought a ticket to go and see it. So this musical, it is a musical, by the way, Days of Wine and Roses. It is a revival too. It used to be on Broadway, if I'm remembering that right. So it began previews on January 6th, opening on January 28th. So by the time that it closes, it will have played 25 previews and 73 regular performances. Once again, even a worse track record than Spamalot had. To circle back to Spamalot real quick, this show is tried and true. It's got relevant and modern new references in it, which is so fun and cool and keeps it alive. But it is an older show, and I'm just really surprised that not more people were interested in seeing it. Was it their marketing? I don't think so, because I see a lot of their commercials on TV. I see their stuff everywhere. So I don't really know what the reason is that it didn't do well. Maybe it is because of the casting. The set is definitely not anything to marvel at. It's a really small set. I don't want to say low budget because I have no idea how much those kinds of things cost, but in comparison to some other shows, it does seem low budget. But it's also kind of fitting that it's a low budget set because Spamalot is just kind of thrown together and fun and unhinged. Anyways, just don't really understand why that one never found an audience. But to circle back to Days of Wine and Roses now, the producer of the show, Kevin McCollum, said in a statement, quote, "Days of Wine and Roses may be ending its engagement at Studio 54. Let me just stop you there, Kevin. This is what they always say. You have to spin it in a good way. You can't ever just be like, we flopped, womp womp. This is sad and sucks and we lost money and now we're closing our show. You always have to spin it. Okay, back to Kevin. He goes on to say, wait, let me not get sued and say the word that keeps you from getting sued that I can't ever remember. This is all my presumption. Maybe this is true. Maybe they will have a life beyond Broadway. But this is just my opinion. Okay, going on. Back to Kevin. He says, quote, "But it will have a long life on our cast album, in future productions, and in the hearts and minds of the people lucky enough to have experienced it on Broadway and off-Broadway this summer at the Atlantic Theater Company. What is exciting is that Broadway theater goers will still have 31 more chances to see Kelly O'Hara and Brian Darcy James in this glorious production," quote. Thank you, Kevin. Way to spin it. Good job. Okay, guys, that wraps up all of the crappy, sad, depressing stories of the news, and let's get into the very exciting things, which are both, we have two more stories. They're both casting news. Okay, so queen, my Broadway queen, my FTM queen, I love her, Robyn Hurder, is coming back to Broadway, baby. She is the busiest. Her and Alex Brightman are the busiest actors on Broadway. They are always booked and busy. They are everywhere. You see them everywhere and you can't help but love them. Am I right? Okay, so Robyn Hurder, she just finished up A Beautiful Noise, and she was also recently in the Smash workshop that seemed to be a smash. I wish I would have gotten invited to their private rehearsal. Smash? Where's my invite? Okay, but moving on. She's been super duper busy with those things, and now this week we have the announcement that just in a matter of a couple of days, she's going to be taking the stage again at Chicago. Now, Robyn Hurder has already played Mona and Roxy Hart in Chicago, so now she's going to be coming on as Velma Kelly, and this is going to be a short engagement, kind of, I guess, from March 26th to June 16th. She will be in the role of Velma Kelly. It's cool to think about the fact fact that she is going to overlap with Ariana Madix, who is on right now. Ariana is planning on leaving the show on April 7th. And so just for like 2 weeks, they're going to be on the stage together. Now, I have never seen Chicago. And my question to you guys is, should I? Because this is a good, interesting cast that I would like to see. I've never been like a huge Vanderpump person, but I'm also really into pop culture, so I know about her to a degree, and I'm just curious about how her performance is. Maybe I'll wait and see who they're going to cast as Roxy after she leaves, and then maybe I'll go to see Robyn, and hopefully they'll cast somebody cool in place of Ariana Madix. But yes, I'm super excited for Robyn Hurder, and let me know, guys, on my Instagram, TikTok, or in my YouTube comments, should I go see Chicago? Do you think I'm going to like it? You guys know what I'm into. It's kind of a staple, so it feels kind of not right that I haven't seen it. I've seen the movie, but should I go and see it on Broadway? Is it worth my money? Okay, let me know. And our last news story today, guys, that I am just brimming with joy to report is that Jake Gyllenhaal, the man of my dreams, other than my fiance, is coming to Broadway. The crowd goes wild. I'm so hyped for this, guys. Now, Jake Gyllenhaal has been on Broadway before. This is not his first time. He's been on Broadway like in 3 other shows, but that was before I lived here and could go and see Broadway whenever. And so now the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal is coming to Broadway, this is the person who whenever I'm walking around Manhattan, I am looking for Jake Gyllenhaal because he lives here and he's always out and about. And so he is like, I don't know if y'all knew this about me, but Brokeback Mountain is one of my favorite movies, and I just think he is so amazing. And I know that like the Swifties don't like Jake Gyllenhaal, so maybe that's surprising that like I'm so obsessed with him, but he is like my celebrity crush and I just love him. But the other side of this story is that also possibly more exciting for maybe most people is that Denzel Washington is going to be in this show as well. And the show is Othello. I am sure this is going to be an exorbitant ticket price, but there are always some affordable options like 30 for 30, where you pay $30 if you're under or around the age of 30. Student tickets, Rush, of course, and lottery. So I hope that I will have the opportunity to see this show because with this cast, Jake Gyllenhaal and Denzel Washington, I'm predicting a $600 ticket. So let's hope I get the chance to see it. Okay, so let's talk about what this show is. It's a Shakespearean, I don't know, I think it's a tragedy. Okay, as you can tell, I'm not familiar with Othello. So I literally Googled Othello for Dummies, and this is what popped up. It was on Shakespeare.org. So to quote Shakespeare.org, when I Googled Othello for Dummies, here's what it told me. Quote, Lago is furious about being overlooked for promotion and plots to take revenge against his general, Othello, the Moor of Venice. Lago manipulates Othello into believing his wife, Desdemona, is unfaithful, stirring Othello's jealousy. Othello allows jealousy to consume... Othello allows jealousy to consume him, murders Desdemona, and then kills himself. Thank you, Shakespeare.org. Thank you for that. So this isn't going to be fun. This isn't going to be fun, cute, and quirky. This is going to suck and be serious and be Shakespearean. Not what I would have picked for what I would like to see Jake Gyllenhaal in on Broadway, but nevertheless, like, whatever, right? Like, at least he's on Broadway. So he has also been, back in 2015 is whenever Jake Gyllenhaal made his Broadway debut, and this was in Constellations. And then 2 years later, he was in the revival of Sunday in the Park with George. And then another 2 years later, so he's got a little bit of a pattern here, he was in Seawall A Life, which is what earned him the Tony nomination. So he's a Broadway boy. We all know he like grew up doing theater and then he got caught up in the movie scene. He's a Nepo baby, so this has always been his life in the spotlight, right? And so I'm just super duper hyped because I'm going, and I'm probably going to go multiple times. I just wish it wasn't Shakespeare. Like, I've got to be honest, guys. Shakespeare ain't it. Shakespeare ain't it. And if you want to know what conspiracy theories that this is when I'm going to lose all of my listeners, but you want to know what conspiracy theories that I abide by, it is that Shakespeare did not write his plays. He did not write his plays, y'all. He was one person. He could not have been pumping out hundreds of stories in his lifetime. He did other things. What I believe, and I kind of qualified to say this because I did a whole paper about this in college. It was like a debate paper about whether you believed he wrote them or did not. And every single piece of information was pointing to the fact that he was a fraud. Does that make his writings any worse or better? No, it doesn't. It's still Shakespeare. It's still classic. It's still invented a lot of the English language. And so, yes, I give him credit for that. But also there's absolutely no way he actually wrote them all with his own mind and by himself. There's literally no way. Anyways, I also just feel like it can get super boring. Is that just me? We went and saw the Publix Theater's production of Hamlet, and they did a lot to spice it up. And I will sit through a Shakespearean show. Absolutely, I will. It is not going to be, if I see something as Shakespeare, it is not going to be the reason that I don't get a ticket. I will still go. And I really enjoyed the Publix production of Hamlet. However, it's not in the English language. It is, but it's not. It's hard to understand. And it takes a lot from the actors to help the audience understand what words you are saying and what the message you're trying to get across is. And I did a lot of Shakespearean shows whenever I was performing, and it's just so crazy. So I'm not hyped that it's Othello, but at least this is a wild story. And so y'all are aware, Lago, the one who is trying to get back at his general, Lago is being played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And then the lead of the production, the General Othello, is played by Denzel Washington. Super hyped for Denzel too. I feel like he's like the Meryl Streep, right? He's just an incredible actor that everybody loves and would want to see. So this is going to be a wild ticket price, and I'm super hyped. I'm really hyped about this. I couldn't believe it whenever I saw it come across my feed this week. Just me and Jake Gyllenhaal are going to be in the same theater together, and I'm so excited. So yeah, I think that's all we really have to say about this. Oh, we don't know much about when and where and how this production is going to be arriving on Broadway. What we do know is it's guessed that it's going to arrive in spring of 2025. So basically in a whole nother year. Oh, I just got so excited, and it's going to be a whole nother year. That's so unfortunate. And it's assumed it will be at a theater that is a Schubert theater, not the Schubert theater, but one theater in the Schubert organization. I don't know what that really brings to the conversation, but yeah, that is as much as we know. I'm sure we'll hear more. We only know that the two of them are going to be in the cast, and as things come out, I will keep y'all updated, and hopefully in a year from now, I will be seeing Jake Gyllenhaal on Broadway. That wraps up our Broadway news, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of From the Mezzanine. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at FromTheMezzanine_podcast, and you can now watch on YouTube. And you can find my YouTube channel in the show notes or by typing in From the Mezzanine, a Broadway podcast. Leave a rate and review wherever you are listening right now, guys. It does such incredible things for the podcast. Somebody said one time, think of it as tipping your podcaster. Just leave them a 5-star review, leave them a rate to show your appreciation, and it bumps up the podcast, and I see all of it. I check my reviews, I check my ratings because they mean a lot to me, and whenever I see that number has gone up, I'm filled with joy. I'm brimming with joy. So leave me a rate and review and show your support for the show. Also, while you're at it, share this podcast with your Broadway bestie because I'm sure that they are going to enjoy it just as much as you do. Thank you guys once again so much for listening, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye!